Hello, this is Helen from the Cut Flower Patch. Welcome. Today we're going to be sowing the seeds from our August seed kit. It's nice to be back. We have had a couple of months break. I was getting a fair bit of feedback from customers who were telling me that they were getting slightly overwhelmed with too many seeds, and as a result too many plants, and everything was the whole process was a little bit sort of overwhelming. And because June and July isn't the best time for sowing cut flower seeds, I thought that might be quite a good opportunity for us to take a little break. And from what most of you have told me, you've quite enjoyed that break, but now you're ready to get going again, so it's good to be back. We have got a lot of new subscribers this month, which is lovely, and welcome to all of you. You have joined us at a very good time. We're going to be sowing some hardy annuals today, all of which we hope to be able to plant out into our cut flower patches before the first frost, which will be sometime probably in November. Because we have got quite a lot of new subscribers, I thought it might be quite useful just to run through briefly the cut flower patch process and how we work. So each month you'll receive in the post a box. The box is letterbox size, so you don't need to worry about being in to accept the delivery. And the most important content of the box obviously are the 5 packets of cut flower seeds. I do spend a lot of time choosing the seeds that we're going to grow. I try and pick lots of favourite cut flowers, all the popular ones you'd expect to see in any cut flower patch, and then every so often I'll choose something that's a little bit more unusual. I try and pick a good mix of colours and a good mix of heights. Most of the seeds we sow are fairly easy to get to germinate. Some are a little bit more challenging. But the aim really is to have cut flowers in your patch right through from May, probably through to November. So far this year, we live in a city. I don't have a huge garden. We're north facing, so we don't get that much sun. So what I did this year was convert 2 small beds in our front garden, which are only about 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters, to my cut flowers. And every day really since May I've had really good, nice good bunches of flowers. This is actually this is what I collected this morning. So these are all flowers that have come from my cut flower patch that have been grown from seed. So hopefully that's what we're aiming for the forthcoming year. The seed, we can't obviously guarantee 100% success for all seeds, and I've certainly had some failures this year, but the seeds we select are very high quality, so the chances of germination are quite high. So we do really pride ourselves on providing quality seeds that are fresh and very much in date. Also in your cut flower patch box each month you will receive 5 plant labels. Labelling, I will go on a lot about labels because it's very easy to forget to label your seeds, and you never remember what they are, and you forget, and then they germinate and you wonder what you've got sitting there in your seed trays. I lost a couple of labels this year and I've got a little bit confused with everything that I've grown. So definitely labels are a big part of what we do. Also in your cut flower patch each month, your cut flower patch box, you'll receive a little handmade pressed flower gift tag. Those of you who've been with us for a while will know I'm very keen on pressing flowers, and in fact all the seeds we're sowing today, this year, I sowed similar seeds last year. I've managed to create some really nice, well I hope they're really nice, pressed flower artwork from those seeds, and I will show you some of that as we go through the individual sowing. You'll also receive a planning document. So I produce each month 1 to 10 scaled drawings, or scaled icons should I say, of the plants that we're sowing that month, and that will help you hopefully to work out how many plants you need to sow and where you're going to put them in your beds. There is something on the Cut Flower Patch website on the blog section which explains how to use these icons if you want to use them. I try to keep it really simple because the planning can be a bit overwhelming. But one of the common problems I think that a lot of people make is that, and I certainly make the same mistake, is you sow too many seeds, you have too many plants, you plant out too many plants and you put them too close together, and then they start competing with each other and you don't get such a successful crop. So normally you'll find you'll need far fewer plants than you think you're going to need. But we won't get too bogged down with that now, but we will try, I will try and give advice about how many seeds to sow and when to sow them. So quite a lot of the seeds we're sowing today, we can sow them today as an autumn sowing, but because there'll be enough seeds in each of the packs to do a second sowing, we'll be able to sow another sowing in the spring, and that way we can sort of do some successional planning, which I think will be very useful. Also, new subscribers receive a nice wooden seed dibber. So if you're subscribing for the first time, you'll get one of these lovely little dibbers in your box. I think one of the probably the best bits of advice I could give you if you are new to creating a cut flower patch is to try and have a dedicated patch, so an area where you just grow cut flowers. I think you get the best results if you treat your patch like you would a vegetable patch. So you're planting it in a more disciplined way, a more orderly way. You're not planting it in an ornamental way. You're planting it in a way that you're going to harvest like you would a vegetable crop. And that makes it easier to harvest, easier to plan. And I'm pretty sure you'll get better results doing it that way. And again, there is something on the Cut Flower Patch blog about choosing an area and planning your patch, and a little bit of advice there if you're new to it. Okay, I think that covers, what I should of course say is I am sowing and growing the same seeds as you at the same time, and then I update on the blog every month. I do an update of the progress I've made with my sowing and growing. You can sort of compare and contrast where you are with your sowing and growing too. I mean, there's obviously regional variations, and some people aren't planting exactly what I plant at the same time as I'm planting it, but it gives you a rough idea of progress. Of course, we don't get 100% success, but the seeds we put into the boxes are, really high quality, so hopefully you get a reasonably good germination rate. And often cut flower patch growers will do better than me, so it gives me a lot of pleasure actually when there's a seed I've sown that I haven't done terribly well with, and then somebody sends me a photograph and they've got all these fabulous blooms that they're harvesting. So I think without further ado, we'll get on with sowing our seeds. Okay, so first off, the things we're going to need today, the labels from our Cut Flower Patch boxes. Just pop the name of the seed that you're sowing, and I always put the date on there as well. It's really useful to have a reference point so you can remember when you actually sowed the seeds. Use a permanent marker. If you use a non-permanent marker, it will wash away when you water your seeds. You're also obviously going to need the 5 packets of seeds from your Cut Flower Patch box. Then also some compost. You can use seed compost if you've got it. I don't tend to bother getting special compost. I just use a good quality multi-purpose compost. And it's important to make sure your compost is peat-free. That is much more environmentally friendly. I have a garden sieve, so I run my compost through a sieve. It is important to try and get out all the sort of lumps and bumps. The seeds are obviously quite small, and you want them to make contact with the compost, and you don't want sort of big bits of bark and things getting in the way. So if your compost is a bit lumpy and you don't have a sieve, just sort of run your fingers through it to get out any bits that might cause a problem. Then also we're going to need some seed trays. 4 out of the 5 seeds from the August pack I'm going to sow into these 24 cell trays. You can use a 48 cell tray, or you can use just a flat seed tray. You can make your own seed trays. There is in fact something on the Cut Flower Patch website about different things you can use to make seed trays out of. old water bottles, milk bottles, strawberry containers. There's all sorts of different things you can use. The most important thing is to have drainage holes in the bottom. If you don't have drainage holes, then your seeds will become waterlogged and they probably won't germinate. I then have a tray just to keep those in, which is useful. And then also you are going to need something to cover your seed trays with while your seeds germinate. These trays that I buy already have a cover with them. If you don't have a cover, then you can use a plastic bag or a shower cap, anything like that, just something clear that's going to cover the seeds and keep the moisture in. And then I also, for the Icelandic poppies, because they're very small seeds, I'm just going to sow them into this tray that I made myself. I think this was a container that had tomatoes in. I just put some holes into the bottom for drainage. But because the seeds are quite small, I just don't need a massive amount of space for them, so I thought this might work quite well. But again, if you don't have anything like this, you could just pop them in a cell tray if you prefer. If you are reusing trays that you've used before, cell trays or plant pots, it is worth actually giving them a really good wash. You want to get rid of any sort of fungal spores that might be lying around. You can disinfect them. Not everybody likes to use disinfectant, but you can mix sort of 7 parts water to 1 part disinfectant to give them a good wash and rinse. But if you don't want to use disinfectant, give them a good wash with soapy water and rinse them through quite thoroughly. And then the final thing you're going to need is something to water your seeds with. One of the big problems I think with seed sowing is that people overwater them, and also because the seeds are very delicate, you want to water them with something that's quite fine rather than a sort of a heavy watering can or hose pipe. So I bought these little things from Amazon. They were very cheap and they're just attached to a sort of a standard water bottle, and they give quite a nice sort of gentle watering. So you can always use those, or you can use sort of an old children's tippy cup. That's got quite a sort of gentle watering nozzle. Or you could use just a watering can, but try and use one with quite a fine rose on it, so you don't overwater your seeds. So that is everything that we need. So I will get on and start sowing our seeds. Actually, one of the seeds we aren't going to sow today, so I mention that now. That's the larkspur. So the larkspur need to be put in your freezer for 2 weeks before sowing. They need to go through a process called stratification, and that, if you put them, that sort of breaks the dormancy of the seed, and then they will grow more successfully if we do that. So I'm going to pop these in the freezer. I'm going to set a reminder on my phone. Very easy to forget they're in there. Then we'll come back to those in 2 weeks' time and sow the larkspur. I sowed some larkspur last year, and people say they're quite tricky, but I had the most amazing results with them. So I am excited to sow these with you and see what we get. But I had flowers for weeks and weeks and weeks earlier this year. Okay, so first off, I'm going to sow the poppy seeds. They are absolutely tiny seeds, and as everyone who'll know who's been with us before, I'm less keen on small seeds. But anyway, so what we're going to do, we're going to surface sow these seeds because they need light to germinate. As a general rule, the smaller seeds need to be sown on the surface and need light to germinate. And then medium-sized seeds need a light covering of compost, and that applies to the corncockle, the cornflower and the Nigella that we're going to sow today. And then larger seeds like sunflower and sweet pea, which we'll be sowing later in the year, need to be sown a bit deeper into the compost. That's sort of the general rule. So what I've done, I've filled the tray I made from a tomato container with multi-purpose peat-free compost, which I've sieved. So I'm going to sow these. I'm going to lightly sprinkle the seeds over this. it's almost impossible to sow sort of one seed at a time because they are so small. And in this instance, because there aren't lots and lots of seeds in the packet, I am going to sow them all. So I'm just going to sprinkle those over the surface. You probably can't see this, but as you'll see when you look in your packet, the seeds are absolutely tiny. Try and get as even a sowing as possible over the surface. It's hard to see them, but try and do your best with that. And then when all those are on, we then need to water this. And because the seeds are so delicate, I'm not going to surface water it. I'm going to pop it in a tray. I've put a little bit of water in this tray, and I'm going to pop that in there and wait for the water to soak through this tray. We don't want to overwater them. As I said before, overwatering seeds is a real common problem. So what I want to do is wait until I just sort of see the colour of this surface change, so it looks a little bit moist. It starts to glisten a bit rather than that be soaking wet. So I'll keep an eye on that. I'll probably set my alarm on my clock actually and check it every 15 minutes or so. And then when they're watered, we need to pop in our label and then cover this with some sort of cover. What I'm going to do actually, I will, because it's quite a small container, I'm going to just put a normal food plastic bag over that. I'm then going to leave that on the kitchen windowsill. And the first signs of germination, so the first signs I see of the seeds coming through, I'm going to take it out of the plastic bag, and I'm probably going to pop that in the greenhouse. If you don't have a greenhouse, you can put it in a cold frame or a polytunnel. If it's exceptionally warm in a couple of weeks' time, I might rethink that, but we'll come back to that when the time comes, and we'll see what the weather is like when these start to germinate. But for now, I'm going to let this moisture soak through, cover it in a plastic bag and pop it on the kitchen windowsill. So that's our Icelandic poppies. Oh, I should have said actually, I planted Icelandic poppies last autumn, and they flowered probably late April, May time, and they were absolutely fantastic. They gave me so much pleasure. I had lots of different colours, and they pressed very nicely as well, and I managed to make some, what I hope are really nice pressed flower pictures from the flowers that I pressed. Okay, so now we'll go on to sowing our Nigella. Okay, so our Nigella seeds. Again, I planted some Nigella last autumn and had a lovely crop in the spring this year. And again, I pressed quite a few Nigella and made some botanical artwork from the flowers that I pressed. Also, if you don't cut them all, once they stop flowering, the seed heads are lovely. They have a really unusual shaped seed head, which you can use the flower with the seed head in dried flower arrangements. So there's lots of uses for Nigella. It doesn't have a terribly long flowering period, so what I'm going to do is sow some today and then probably do another sowing maybe in probably 6 weeks time. So we've got some sort of successional sowing going on. Again, it's up to you if you want to do that and if you've got the space, but I'm going to give that a go this year. The other thing I think it's worth considering is just how many seeds you want to sow. Nigella, unlike some of the corncockle and the cornflower that we're going to sow, doesn't take up an awful lot of space in the bed. But going back to what I was saying earlier about my cut flower patch being quite small, probably maximum I'll have space for 5 Nigella plants in my cut flower patch. So I'm going to sow enough for my cut flower patch. I'm going to sow a few extras in case something doesn't go quite right. And then I'm also sowing some for some friends as well. So in this instance, I'm going to sow a full tray of 24 Nigella. Again, up to you how many you sow. But I say just be careful about sowing too many, because it'll just get frustrating if you sow more than you can actually deal with. So I filled this with multi-purpose peat-free compost. You need to depress the compost slightly because you want to get rid of any air bubbles, because you don't want the seeds getting trapped in air bubbles. And then I'm just going to pop one seed per cell. Sometimes people put more than one per cell, but I think because we get good germination rates, one seed per cell is sufficient. We'll see anyway, but hopefully that will be enough. As I say, there's loads in your packet, so if you decide, if for some reason the sowing doesn't work, you can always sow again. So if we put one in each cell here, and then when I've done that, I'm going to cover that with, I'll just put those back in the packet and keep them somewhere dry for later. Then I'm going to sprinkle just a light covering of compost on each of those cells. I won't do that all while you're waiting, but essentially I'm going to cover each of those with the compost and then put in my label, and then they are going to need a light water. So I'm going to use my Amazon watering device to water these. Again, as I said, don't overwater them, just moisten the compost. If you overwater them, you'll just wash the seeds out and they'll just be too damp. I know it's quite a hard concept, isn't it? What's too much water and what's not quite enough water, but hopefully we'll get the hang of that. And then we're going to cover that with our cover. As I said before, if you don't have a cover like this, you could use a plastic bag or a shower cap. Pop that on the kitchen windowsill, and as soon as we see the first signs of germination, we're going to take the cover off and probably put it in the greenhouse or cold frame or polytunnel, because as soon as they start to germinate, if we leave the cover on, the seedlings will start to search for the light, and if the cover's on, they'll just get leggy because they can't find enough light. So what we're doing is, once they start to germinate, we're giving them more light. And then once these get their first 2 true leaves, so they'll have the initial set of leaves and then they'll get another set of leaves, then we're going to pick them out into 9cm pots. But for now, we don't need to worry about that. We just need to get them to the stage of starting to germinate. So last but not least, I'm going to sow the cornflower and the corncockle. Both the cornflower and the corncockle need slightly more space in your patch than the Nigella, and also they'll flower for quite a bit longer. So I'm not going to sow full trays of each of these. I'm going to do half of corncockle and half of cornflower. So in my patch, I'll probably have space maybe for 4 of each plant. So if I sow 12 of each, I've got some space for a few casualties, and if I don't have any casualties, then I'll probably give some of those away. Again, obviously it's up to you how many you sow, but just be mindful that don't sow the whole pack. You've got over 200 cornflower seeds and over 50 corncockle seeds, and unless you're actually a professional flower farmer, you won't need anywhere near that many. Both of these are absolutely lovely traditional sort of cottage garden flowers. I love them both. I've grown quite a lot of cornflower over the years, but never grown corncockle until last year, and it was such a joy. It was a lovely flower to have in the patch, and it kept going for quite some time. And again, I pressed both of them, and they came out nicely too. So with each of these, again, I'm only going to put 1 seed in each cell, and then with any leftovers we can save those and sow them again in the spring. So then with the cornflower seeds, just like the corncockle, I'm going to put 1 in each cell. They're very distinctive, the cornflower seeds. You can recognise them. That's what's got these little hairy bullets almost. There we go, 1 in each. And as with the Nigella, it's a medium-sized seed like the Nigella, so we are going to cover each of those with a small covering of compost. I won't again do it all now because it's not terribly exciting, you watching that. Don't forget to put your label in. I've got cornflower that side and corncockle that side. And I'm going to give those a light water as before, cover them with my cover, and then pop them on the kitchen windowsill, and as soon as they germinate the cover will come off and they'll go into my greenhouse, or if you don't have a greenhouse, your cold frame or polytunnel. I will just keep an eye on the weather in case it's really hot when they do germinate, and take a decision then, because obviously we don't want the seedlings going into a really hot greenhouse. But we'll have a look at how that's looking in a couple of weeks' time, and I'll let you know what the best thing is to do. Okay, so I'll be back in a couple of weeks' time when the larkspur come out the freezer, and we will get those sown into some cell trays. Okay, well, I hope that's all been useful. Any feedback, as always, is really appreciated. I always look forward to hearing from you, and catch up soon.